Hello and welcome to Rob from the Internet Talks About Beer, a show where we discuss different styles of beer, beer history, beer flavor profiles. We give shout outs to breweries we think make exceptional beer, and we talk about whatever else comes to mind during the course of our conversation. I'm Rob from the Internet. Let's talk about beer. All right, so joining me today are Matt and Lauren from HopsGeekNews Podcast. If you guys could, one at a time, please. Tell me a little bit about yourselves and how you got into craft beer. We'll start with Lauren. Ladies first.
So I always say that I got into craft beer in kind of like the most white girl way possible. I was big into pumpkin beers and Oktoberfest beers. And once I had those, you know, you're at Halloween, you're getting all festive, and then comes Christmas, and I was like, well, I'm going to try all these Christmas beers. And there was, you know, white IPA accumulation from New Belgium I really fell in love with. And I still, every Christmas, I still get that one, at least a 6-pack of it. It's still a great go-to. And so I started, you know, drinking the IPAs and dipping my toe in that water. And then come St. Patrick's Day, I get a green Bud Light at downtown Disney. And I'm like, I think something's wrong with their keg because this doesn't have any flavor. And so then I got a bottle of it and realized,
that's just Bud.
I had just ruined my taste buds. And so at that point, I never went. I was 100% Budweiser all the way. And I can't drink them at all anymore now. And it was just a terrible progression, or I should say decrease of my bank account the more I got into beer. But I have no regrets.
All right, Matt?
Yeah, so I'm originally from right outside of Boston, where there's a ton of beer that's been around for a while, right? So you have your Sam Adams, you got your Harpoon, then you can shoot up to Vermont. They've got a good stuff where you're skiing. And so I was always kind of drinking, your Bud Lights, but then I was drinking a lot of Sam Adams, and my stepdad and I were like, this is pretty good stuff. Let's go to the brewery. So we went to the brewery, and then we just started going to breweries, brewery hopping, and trying all the different beers. We're like, wow, this sounds interesting, right? Who knew you can put all this kind of stuff in a beer? What's an IPA? And at first you're like, oh God, what is an IPA? You taste it and you're like, oh, I was not ready for that at all. But we just really bonded over craft beer and our adventures, just going from brewery to brewery. And it was just something that I came to love and became a snob, so to speak, as other people would say, because I also don't go back and drink the Bud Lights, or I'll drink the occasional maybe PBR. That's about it on very rare occasions. But yeah, that's kind of how my journey got started.
Gotcha. Well, you know, as people who've watched the show know, I'm an avid beer drinker. I'm a home brewer. I've been brewing on and off for 15 or so years. As Matt and I were talking before we started recording, I had planned on opening a brewery here in Canada, but decided that it was far too expensive and way too much hassle to do that. So I just brew at home. So yeah, you know, so it's good to talk to other people who have an interest in craft beer, and you know, hopefully we can get some more people over to our side of the fence.
Absolutely.
So tonight, it's evening for this recording. Tonight we're going to be talking about blondes. So I actually have two different beers, and you guys are going to decide which one I drink through sheer chance. So Matt, you're going to assign beer number one a value of high or low, and then beer number two will take whichever one you don't assign beer number one.
I'm gonna say low.
All right, and then Lauren, you're going to camera was acting up there. You're going to I mean, I assume you guys don't have dice with you because you're not as hardcore geeks as I am. But
Actually, I think I do.
Do you?
We were supposed to play some role play game with another podcast, and I think they're still in this drawer over here.
If you've got dice, pull them out and roll them. Otherwise, I'll roll them.
You know, they're in here somewhere, but it'd take me a good 10 minutes since we're recording. So.
All right. Well, we won't do that. All right. So, what you're going to do is after I roll the dice, you're going to take a guess, and you're going to say, Is it an ale or is it a lager? Just by me holding up the can from a little distance away from the camera. All right.
Okay.
Just a little bit of fun here tonight, if I can hold on to the dice. All right. So I rolled a 35. So that's low. So that's the first can. All right. So just by looking at the logo, and it's a nice bright yellow and white can, do you think this is an ale or a lager?
I'm going to go lager.
Oh, you would be incorrect. It's actually a blonde ale. But that's fine because blondes technically can be either. They can either be an ale or a lager, so that's why I chose to. We're having a little bit of fun with this tonight.
Yeah.
So for people who don't know, blonde ales are actually a member of the pale ale family. So their siblings include the IPA, the amber ale, the Scotch ale, the bitter, the Irish red, and Bière de Garde, if you're familiar with that style. They're always very pale in color. The term blonde for pale ales actually gained its prominence in Europe, and believe it or not, South America, as opposed to like the UK. So it's particularly blonde being used for a very light ale is particularly used in France, Italy, Belgium, and then Brazil. So I don't know if it's because people from Europe traveled to South America and the moniker stuck down there or what. They tend to be crisp and clean beers, very very similar in the look and fashion of your Buds, your Millers, your Coors, things like that. Obviously, craft beer is going to have a little more flavor than the macros, because the macros are designed to appease a very large swath of the population, and they're designed to be refreshing, not necessarily flavorful. So in the United Kingdom, golden or summer ales, as they're called, were developed in the late 20th century. The typical golden ale has an appearance similar to that of a pale lager, with the malt character that is subdued, and the hop profile ranges from spicy to citrus. Although the North American variant doesn't really have that spicy or citrusness to it. It's kind of it's more, it falls more on the malt flavors for the blondes. So the UK style is attributed to a brewer whose name was John Gilbert. He was the owner of the Back Brewery, and he invented the golden ale style, which is the analog of the blonde ale or lager in North America in 1989. So this is actually a relatively recent style of beer. It's not as old as like the German Pilsners and things like that. It is one of the most approachable styles because it is so similar to the macro beers, though. So, what are you going to be drinking tonight, Lauren?
I am actually drinking a strawberry blonde from Astoria Brewing out in Oregon. So a friend of mine was just out there and sent me a nice big box with Pliny the Elder and everything, and this just happened to be in there. So I figured this works perfect for tonight. It's only 5.4%. I usually tend to drink a bit higher ABV, but when I looked it up on Untappd, it fell under fruit beer. But I'm not getting strong strawberry. It's very, very light. Like this would be a great one to drink at the beach.
Strawberry is one of those hard flavors, though. They have to use so much of it to impart any of the flavor into the beer that it's really cost prohibitive.
They said they used 90 pounds of strawberries.
I would not doubt that.
Yeah, I'm sure that was fun putting all that in there.
All right, Matt, what are you drinking?
Yeah, I'm drinking a blonde ale called Meteor Shower from Ghostfish Brewing Company. It is out of Seattle, Washington. Kind of the cool can. You can kind of get a little bit of the color there as well. But it is actually, fun fact, it's 100% gluten-free, which you don't really see a lot of. And it won the 2017 GABF Silver for gluten-free beer. And
nice.
It's only a 4.5% and really, really easy, smooth drinker. You get a little bit of flavor. Like I feel like in some of these blondes, you get a little bit more of like the wheat almost flavor at times, whereas this one it doesn't have a lot of that, but it almost tastes a little citrusy to me at least.
And that is acceptable in the style. It's just not it's not the norm. It's more the exception than the rule. And as for the alcohol content, a blonde should be anywhere between 4 and 5 typically. They do range up to 5.5 to 6, depending on how the brewer has tweaked it. I will be drinking Whitewater Brewing Company's Farmer's Daughter. It's a blonde ale.
Sorry, I'm a country music fan. That made me think of the song.
I gotcha. So it comes in exactly at 5%. It comes in at 22 IBU, which means it's not going to be bitter at all. And it's a nice blonde ale. So I'm going to crack this open, pour it into a glass, and we'll see how it looks. I have not had this beer yet. So
Nice.
It was interesting when I had, because I've never really looked into blonde ales too much because it's not a style that I usually lean towards. But I was very surprised when I saw that blonde ales can be used with ale or lager yeast. Because I thought that was what differentiated them from an ale or a lager. And then so that kind of threw me for a loop.
Right, which is why technically people don't say a blonde ale. They ask for a blonde because it can either be an ale or a lager depending on how the brewery makes it. So you can ask specifically for a blonde ale if they have a blonde ale, but if you just ask for a blonde, you might get an ale, you might get a lager. So yeah, looking at this one, it's golden, it's clear. As you can see, it's got lots of bubbles, which is what you should be getting from it. So in terms of color, it should be a straw color to a light amber, typical for the style. Clarity, it should be. This is funny because it's one of those styles that it can be brilliantly clear like this, or it can be slightly hazy. It's perfectly acceptable either way. Carbonation visually, it should be medium to fast rising bubbles. I don't know how yours is, but mine, I don't know if you can see it, but there's lots of bubble action going on here. So
yeah, mine's still bubbling.
Yeah, same.
If you put your nose over it and take a nice whiff, you shouldn't get any real alcohol flavors or aromas from it. It should be more of a bready or a biscuity. Might be a slightly floral scent to it. The hop aroma would be low to medium low. So like I said, you might pull a little bit of that hop aroma out for the florals, or it might be a little bit citrusy, or it might be a little spicy from that. But you shouldn't really taste any of the hops when you're drinking the beer. The malt, it should be a light sweetness. It shouldn't be overly it shouldn't be a heavy malt beer like an ESB or a stout where it's really malt forward. It should be the backbone of the beer, but it shouldn't dominate the beer. That's the thing about this style. It's designed to be really well-rounded in terms of the overall flavor profile.
It is very true. It's very light, easy drinker, man. These are the ones that I typically like to drink a lot in the summertime, being in Idaho, because it's so hot and dry. And if I'm going to go cut the grass, I'm like, a nice good lager or a blonde. And blondes are something that I don't see enough out here, actually, which is weird because they are so refreshing.
They are. Well, the problem is for a lot of brewers, making a blonde means they're not making another style that might be more popular because it isn't as well known a style. Much like the American cream ale, it's a great beer, but it's often overlooked because it gets overshadowed by your typical pilsners or your lagers, your other lagers or your IPAs and things like that. So and again, then they're treading into the same water as the macro beers. So you're not necessarily going to pull people for a beer that's similar in profile to a macro beer, unless they're a person who's just venturing into craft beer and they're looking for something that's familiar but not too scary.
Right. Yeah. It's the beer that somebody who's not into craft beer usually orders at the brewery.
Oh, yeah.
We had one guy that's come on our podcast a couple times named Tim, and he's not really into beer, but he stops at Three Daughters Brewing. Well, I think he gets it at Publix and buys their blonde beach ale because to him, it's their most Bud Lightiest beer that he can drink.
Right. Well, but that's perfectly fine. I mean, that's how you get people interested in the craft beer. Yeah. They'll say, "Oh, this is similar to Bud, but this has different flavor.
It's better.
It's close enough that it doesn't scare them off. Like you wouldn't take somebody who's only ever drank Budweiser or Miller or Coors and then plunk down like a double IPA in front of them and say, you're
Here's
gonna
Pliny, enjoy.
Oh
you're
my
gonna
God,
love
what a waste.
yeah you're gonna love this beer, I guarantee it. And watch them just cower and run away. This is going to be something that you could put down in front of a friend who's I only drink this beer, and you could put it in front of them and go, here, this is going to be similar to what you like, but it's going to have more flavor, and it's not going to be that it's better or worse. It's just going to have more depth of flavor, and it might be that gateway beer that convinces them, oh well, maybe I could try something else.
Yeah.
I will say that you're definitely right about that. So I worked at Beer Fest last Saturday, and this town is not known for like craft beer drinkers that I'm at. So I'm close to Boise, but I'm not in Boise. I'm more in like farmer town. And so of course everyone walking around was like, I don't know what a Scottish ale is. What is this Hefeweizen you have? And it's just like,
Wow.
well, you like, what do you like? And they're like, Bud Light. And I'm like, okay, try this ale real quick. I think you're going to like it. And they would drink it and they'd be like, this is amazing. And they would be coming back for that. And it's one of those just gateways to hopefully to where they're like, all right, I like this one. Let me try this similar type thing. And then they kind of branch off from there.
Right. Well, and that's kind of the whole point of this video series that I'm doing, is to try and try and point out stuff like that. So people who might not be inclined otherwise would be like, oh, well, that actually sounds like something I might want to try. And it'll hopefully give them enough of a perspective that they'll at least dip their toe in the water and give something a chance,
For sure.
Well, and I think expectations, and we base a lot of how we react to things on expectation, whether it be beer or a movie. So when you're describing flavors to somebody, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, I didn't pick that up before. I can taste that clove in the Hefeweizen now," whereas before they were like just drinking it because it's beer and weren't necessarily appreciating it. Not that you have to appreciate every sip of beer you ever take, but it's definitely a craft, and it should be appreciated.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, craft brewers put their heart and soul into most of their creations. I mean, there's going to be the outliers who just, they're in it to try and make a quick buck or whatever, and they're just pumping stuff out. But for the most part, this industry is made up of people who, one, like beer, and two, want to share that with other people. So that's the whole reason they got into the craft brewing scene, was to share their passion.
Right.
So
I would say like the one big thing too about the craft beer community that a lot of people don't realize until they're a part of it is that it really is a welcoming community. Like, you see those people that, oh, if I don't drink this, they're going to turn their nose up to me. They're going to, because I'm not drinking this IPA. It's like, well, no, man. What do you like? Like, we just like talking about all sorts of beer, and we get excited about all sorts of flavors. It doesn't matter what it is.
Right. Go ahead.
I was just going to say actually something similar to what I heard on one of your past episodes. It's like, when craft beer first started to take off, it was like cool to call yourself a craft beer snob. And then I feel like that has shifted, because it's like they don't want to be snobs. And the big thing I think is supporting local. You want to support the small guy and at the same time enjoy the really good beer. But I mean, I know people who love craft beer, but when they're slamming beers at a tailgate, they're drinking Miller Lite. So, I mean,
oh, yeah,
to each their own. But yeah, the craft snob thing has kind of dissipated, which I'm actually grateful for.
Yeah, it went from being a beer snob to being like a beer nerd. And that has a totally different connotation to it, because, a snob is somebody who looks down on other people if they're not drinking what they deem to be the right beer. Whereas a beer nerd is more like that. Yeah, okay, I get that you like this, but you might like this. It tastes like this, and it's more of a I want to include you in this than calling it a beer snob.
Right.
And I go a step further, and I just call myself, I'm a beer enthusiast.
I've actually said that for years.
That's a really good. I haven't heard. Well, I think I might have, but I've not. I've always just said I'm a beer nerd, just because I'm a comic nerd, I'm a movie nerd, I'm a beer nerd. It's one of those things. But that's actually a really good way of putting it. An enthusiast.
Well,
yeah. So go ahead.
Oh no, you're good.
I said, I know just enough about craft beer, because I brew it and I've been drinking it for years, that I'm dangerous. So I'm an enthusiast. I'm not an aficionado yet, though I am starting next month. I'm starting certification classes for
Nice.
for
nice.
becoming a the
Cicerone?
No, it's the Prud'homme, or I don't know exactly how to pronounce it. It's the Canadian equivalent of the Cicerone.
I'm gonna ask our Canadian friends what that means because I'm not sure what the word is up there.
It's I think it's Prud'homme or Prud'homme or something like that. It's PRUD apostrophe HOMME, and it's named after some famous brewer in Canada. But it's the Canadian equivalent of the Cicerone. And up here, they just call them, they don't call them Cicerones, they're beer sommeliers. So
I mean, that's basically what it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's
right.
all, really.
But rather than calling it a Cicerone, they call it a beer sommelier because that's what it is. But the certification is this Prud'homme or however you pronounce it. But yeah, I'm starting. It's 4 different levels. I'm starting level 1 in September. So then I'll be a certified beer enthusiast.
Aha. Yes, I am a certified beer server myself, but I never went to the next level because the whole world shut down and it was live classes and whatnot. So it's still on my to-do list. I really do want to do that.
I am also a certified beer server. Look at us.
Look at us. Nerds all around.
First got into because our podcast is a spinoff of our main podcast, which is just beer. So when I joined the main guy, Jay, who started Hops News, my response was, look, I'm not in the industry. I'm just an enthusiast of the industry. And, that's how I've always kind of, I love the industry. I give them all my money.
Right. So do I.
I would say that doing our podcast, the Hops News, I was into it, but not to the level that, like Lauren has brought us to, because Lauren does a fantastic beer school as well. Like you guys both, I mean, just listening to you guys talk, that's what kind of draws me more into it, because I'm seeing you guys know so much and then diving into it and the histories and stuff. I'm like, man, I really love this. And then I just drink it for the taste. So I love tasting the different flavors and things. That's a big part of it too. So it's funny is I've been recording a lot of shows recently because I'm in my second set of recordings. So the first 10 are the basically the intro that I started doing, and hopefully I've gotten better since then because this is episode 23 that we're recording. Even though Jordan.
this
is gonna be the best one.
even though episode 9 is the one that's dropping tomorrow, but so I've been recording a bunch of these, and it's funny. On 3 different occasions, the people I've had on have never tried the beer style that we were talking about, and in 2 of the 3, they're like, "Yeah, this is going to become a regular in my rotation of beers that I drink," and that's fantastic. I mean, that's the whole point of this type of thing is to introduce people to beer styles they might not necessarily try on their own. So,
what were some of these styles, out of curiosity?
One of them was Chimay Red, so the Belgian double.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And then the other was Chimay Blue, which is the Belgian quad. The people had never tried either one of them, and
dangerous.
Yeah.
And what's funny is I recorded 2 shows that day, and it was back to back, double and then quad.
So by that point, you were just like, "Oh my gosh!" Where your head starts to spin at the end, and you're just like, "Oh, I gotta take a breather."
Because they never taste that strong.
Luckily, I'm a big guy. I've got a lot of soak power, and I've been drinking it for enough years that I swing more towards the double-digit beers to begin with. So I'm more of the barrel-aged stouts and Baltic porters and things like that. One of my favorites is there's a brewery up here who every couple of years puts out a barrel-aged barley wine. It comes in at like 14%, and it's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I've got one down on the shelf for this Christmas. It's just sitting there waiting for Christmas, and then but yeah, so that's kind of my wheelhouse, are the really heavy hitters, the big ABVs. So drinking a 7 and a 9 back to back. Yeah, it's just like
the Equival's that one good one. Lauren's the one that drinks the heavy hitters more so for us. Like one morning we were recording and she just pulled out like the 13%er on a Sunday morning, and it was like,
called
whoa.
Sunday morning stout. How could I not?
I know, if it's just so that's what we still like get on her about, because she just like pulled out this big old bomber. It was like 13%, and it was like 8:00 in the morning
delicious.
my time.
It was so good. No, I love barrel-aged stouts. I don't drink them as often as I'd like to because that's committing to a bomber, because my husband is not a fan of them. But my favorites, though, are the hazies, but I like the doubles and the triples. So it's usually, I think the one, like with the other night, I only had 2 beers, and I was like, oh, I feel it already, because both of them were 10%.
Yeah.
So.
Well, but that's kind of my point, too. It's like, I'm going to drink a beer that's really good and might be really strong, where I don't have to drink 30 of them to feel the effects. You know?
Yeah, that's very true too. And there's a lot of flavor still in those ones, so you're kind of getting all the stuff that you want. Like, okay, some nights you just, hey, maybe you want to take the edge off, and that's totally fine. But you also want something with a lot of flavor. Well, yeah, especially coming. Oh man, yeah. But
the last 2 years, it's been every night. Yeah.
It's like I thought we were coming out of this, and then everything's starting to close back down, and it's like the never-ending year is just continuously going, just part 2.
March 793rd.
Yeah, no, it's just like, but I'm like you, Lauren. We both have a bunch of bombers, and it's just if we live close to each other, we'd be so set off because we can split them. But I don't want to commit to drinking a whole one myself because my wife, she likes lagers. That's her thing. So she'll drink lagers, but she doesn't drink the hard stuff.
All I'm hearing is a bunch of quitters here. So.
You know what? Challenge accepted. It's Friday night.
All right.
I got a beer fridge right here.
I have a 9-foot-long back bar cooler to my right here with 3 taps on it, and it's full of various beers because I
he's
drink
the
a lot
only
of
one
beer.
who's ever put me to shame in the beer fridge.
I was about to say,
Damn.
like he's in his brewery right now too. You missed this part. Like he's in his brewery. And it looks nice. Like he's got the whole setup and.
So yeah, that's the fermentation side of things, and this is the cooler, and then in front of me here is where the actual brewing takes place. So yeah, it's this is my brew space, and it's also, I don't know if you can see up in that corner, that it's also my network facility. So I have a 1.5 gig fiber line that comes to my house and a 10 gig network backbone throughout the entire place because I am that big of a nerd.
Hey, you know what? Whatever works, right? Whatever works for you, and it's probably made not being able to go out and do too much kind of more bearable too. But I got to know, since you brew, what is your favorite style to brew?
Oh, I already know this one because I listened to a bunch of them.
It's Imperial Stouts.
Imperial Stouts. Okay, I haven't listened as much as Lauren has.
Yeah,
I've been listening all day actually.
I have no time, so like.
Yeah, so my go-to beer when I brew beer, I have a beer that's called War Never Changes. So, which is based from the Fallout games because
those are really good games.
Right, so that's my base stout. War Never Changes is my base stout. What's funny is because it changes all the time. It's just War Never Changes is the name, and it's my Imperial Stout base. So like right now, if you could actually read it up on my sign there, one of the beers that I have is called War in Norway, which is an Imperial Stout that was brewed with Kvik yeast.
I knew you were going to be saying that. So you brewed a stout with Kvik yeast?
Yes.
So I've heard of people doing it with like a red ale or a IPA. Is it any different with a dark beer like that?
So it depends. I used a strain that's developed by a company here in our area called Escarpment Labs. They were some yeast nerds who started it up while they were in college and turned it into a viable business. And they came up with their own blended strain called Jordal, which is really cool. So if you keep it at 20 to 25 degrees Celsius, which is 70 to 73 degrees Fahrenheit for the non-metric folks, it'll produce a clean finished beer. If you let it go between 30 and 40, which is going to be between 82 and 87.5 degrees or so Fahrenheit, it'll produce a more fruity flavor. And the thing is, I put in a wort that the starting gravity was 1.09 something. It was super high, and I put it in and I dumped 2 packets of this yeast in, and in 3 days I had 11.5% stout.
Wow!
Damn.
So it still works just as fast with stouts, if not.
Oh yeah, and it's it's amazing. It's funny too because I pitched it, and 10 minutes later, I've got the line going out of the fermentator from the fermenter into a big carboy to off gas. And 10 minutes after I pitched it, it was just like bubbling like nobody's business. It went for 3 days. I mean, almost exactly 72 hours, and then just stopped. It's like, I'm done.
Right.
And I was like,
that's insane.
I'm like, is it really done? And I'm like shaking it, and make sure a little few bubbles come out. And I took a sample of it and I checked the gravity. I'm like, holy shit, this stuff came in at 11.5% in 3 days.
Wow.
I mean, it cut my imperial stout times in half, because I used to ferment for 2-3 weeks for a big imperial stout, and then I have to age it for 2-3 weeks to let it kind of mellow. Well, now I just cut that down to it's 3 days to ferment, and then just let it age in the keg for a couple weeks before I start serving it, and I'm good to go.
So you keep calling yourself a geek, so you might appreciate this. We have a friend of ours who's in the process of opening a brewery in Tennessee. So he came on and he designed all these geek-themed beers. And one was Flash. It was a red ale with Kviki yeast because it ferments so quick.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So
I've got... Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, Lauren, he actually tweaked one recently. He's making it mango coconut. The Aquaman curry goza. One? They're putting mango coconut in it. I forgot to tell you.
The Aquaman one, that was fantastic, because he actually made them and shipped some of them to us. So he did a curry goza, which you wouldn't think would work because Arthur Curry and, salt water. And it was fantastic. It was like probably the craziest beer I've ever had, or I guess the most unique, but it was absolutely fantastic. So I'm curious now to try his variation of it.
Nice. Yeah, so my recipes tend to be a little more traditional. I'll tweak things here and there, but my naming convention is definitely not. So like I've got Pippin and Mary is my Belgian double from Lord of the Rings, and I've got
yes,
I've got an alcoholic ginger beer that I make that I call Nuka Ginger. From the Fallout series, I've got an old school alcoholic sarsaparilla that's called Sunset Sarsaparilla. I've got a toasted coconut imperial stout called Stay Puffed.
Oh
that sounds
man,
delicious.
I love all those. The beer that I brewed recently was an amber ale, and I named it Heroic Tales after Squirrel Girl. That's what I did. Heroic
Squirrel
Tales,
Girl.
yes. My next one, I got to think of a good name. So I'm going to brew a good pumpkin maple stout, I think, here soon.
Oh, nice.
So I need to think of a good name for that one. I'll probably do it Nightmare Before Christmas, just for Lauren there.
If you've never brewed with maple before, know that if you put it in during the first part of the fermentation, you're going to lose all the flavor.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Put it in if you're going to do like a 2-stage ferment. Put it in on the second stage, and then put a little booster in when you go to condition it in the keg or however you're going to condition it, because it's just sugar and it ferments away and you lose all that flavor. So it's.
I was actually trying to figure out, because I never have brewed with it before. I was like, when is a good time to pour it in there? So that's good to know the second part. Yeah.
So like I said, and I learned that the hard way. I put in 2 gallons of maple syrup in a fermenter with my wort, and when I pulled it out, it didn't taste like maple at all.
That's a lot of money in maple right there.
Yeah, I have a couple gallons of fresh myself, so that's really extra good to know.
Yeah, no, put it in. Like I said, if you're going to do a 2-stage ferment, put it in on the second stage, and don't put it all in. Save some of it as a booster for when you go to keg it and condition or
okay.
when you're getting ready to put it in bottles. I don't know how you do.
Yeah,
I do.
I do bottles just because I don't have the can, but I might look into getting something for cans just to do that if this takes off.
Well, what did you make last time? Red ale?
It was an amber ale.
Amber ale.
Yeah, and which is in the same family as the blonde ale that we were supposed to be discussing.
I know. Mine's gone already. Blonde ales. There's a fun fact there. They go down really quick.
They do. So one of the things. So getting back to topic a little bit. Sensations when you're drinking blonde ale. So the body should be soft and kind of round. It shouldn't be sharp or harsh. She switched over to a real beer. I see how it is. I gotta pound this damn blonde. So
I didn't mean to drink it that fast. It just went down so easy. So yeah, I just opened an IPA.
Gotcha. So yeah, it should be kind of a rounded, very mellow body to it. kind of a medium mouthfeel. So it's going to be, you're drinking a beer, but it's not going to be super heavy like if you were drinking a stout or a porter or a barley wine. But it's not going to be so thin that you think you're drinking a Coors or a Miller or a Bud. Finish on it should be short. So you take a drink, you open your mouth, you might have a split second or two of a little aftertaste, and then it's gone. Which is what you want for this kind of stuff, because typically you're drinking it when it's hotter out. Food pairings, believe it or not, it pairs freaking fantastic with spaghetti and meatballs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was surprised at that one too.
Pepper jack cheese. Obviously your classic hot dog and potato chips. and believe it or not, oatmeal raisin cookies.
I had read sugar cookie pairs well as well.
That's interesting. Yeah, I had no idea about, especially the spaghetti and meatballs and oatmeal raisin. Had no idea.
So the spaghetti and meatballs, it's because the spaghetti is a pasta, so you're getting more of that kind of that carbohydrate flavor, that kind of chewiness to it, and then the savory of your marinara sauce and your meat is going to play off of the slight sweetness in the beer itself. And then obviously anything that's sweet, sugar cookies, oatmeal raisin cookies, Jolly Ranchers, Jelly Bellies, whatever you want, they're going to go well with it too, because it's all sugar.
Yeah, that's true. That is very, very true.
But it pairs really well with savory foods, because the savory foods kind of, if you're not looking for that sweetness, the savory foods will kind of cut that sweetness for you, which is why pepper jack works well with it, and a hot dog, and like I said, the spaghetti sauce, because spaghetti sauce is a little sweet itself, but it tends to be savory as well, because you've got the different spices that are in the sauce. So acceptable servingware for a blonde, depending on if it's an ale or a lager, can either be a tulip glass or a pint. I saw you guys were drinking yours out of the standard shaker pint. I am drinking mine out of a Nonic pint. Fun fact, if you didn't know, the Nonic pint was actually invented not so you would not drop the glass because of the bump, but that bump was actually invented. The bump was actually invented so that if the glass tipped over, it didn't break the rim of the glass.
Oh, I thought it was for IPAs.
Interesting.
Yeah. Nope. No. Yeah. It's literally, it was designed so that people in England, when they're drunk and they reach out and they hit the glass and it tips over, it doesn't break the edge.
Huh. How funny.
But it has the added bonus that when it's wet, it doesn't slip out of your hand because of the bump. Whereas the shaker pint, if it gets a little too wet, you could lose your grip, drop it.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about shaker pints is they're built like tanks, and they're really hard to break.
That's true. Huh. Look at that. We learned something else today. Huh.
Well, I almost put it in a tulip glass, but we were sporting our HopsGeekNews. Glassware.
It's that's right. It's all about that shameless promotion. I don't begrudge you that at all. I'm all about the self promotion.
Yeah, but I do love some good proper glassware.
Yeah, yes, big time.
So the thing is, proper glassware is gonna make your experience better. But if the beer is a good beer to start with, it doesn't matter if you're drinking it out of a solo cup, or you're drinking it out of a shaker pint, or you're drinking it out of a leftover tin can from making baked beans the other day. A good beer is going to be a good beer.
Very, very true. Absolutely.
And conversely to that, no glassware in the world is going to make a bad beer taste better.
Despite what anybody thinks, yes.
Well, serve it in freezing helps.
That's because then you can't taste anything.
Right.
For those who are interested, the proper serving temperature for a blonde is between 7 and 10 degrees Celsius, which is 45 to 50 degrees in freedom units.
And freedom units.
I'm loving this.
We're bad at math units.
Yeah. Well, so I'm originally from the States, moved up to a metric country. I've got people who I talk to who are still in the States, and people who are in the UK, people who are in Europe, people who are here in Canada, and a majority of them are metric. So I tend to put things in both because I want to appeal to as many people as possible. And I realize that I might be good at math and doing things in my head, converting temperatures. Not everybody is.
No.
I was saying we internationally travel. I do so much math between the money conversion and then the meters versus the all of it. It's so much.
Yeah, right. Well, all you got to remember is that you use imperial units where everything, or every mile is just 40% more than those damn metric people do with their kilometer.
Very true. Very true.
At least we do that as far as races here. So it's like I know 5K is 3.1 miles. So at least we're not going for us.
10Ks, that kind of stuff.
Is 6.2.
Yeah. Well, it's So and that's the world I live in. I mean, I you wouldn't know it to look at me, but I am actually a runner. I've run 2 marathons myself, and I run. Yeah, I ran the first one. I ran the first marathon to see if I could, and then I ran the second one to see if I could beat my time on the first one, and I did.
Nice.
By a massive 2 minutes.
Hey, that still counts. I don't care if it's 1 second or what. That still counts.
But yeah, I found that for me, if I'm going to go out and run like an organized event, the half marathon is my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
It's not too big of a commitment. It's about 2 hours of my time when I'm actually running it, and it's about 2 weeks of my time to get myself prepped to run. I mean, because I run 4.
Is
I run
time
4 days
different
a
in
week.
Canada too? Because it takes me a lot longer.
Well, I would venture to say that I'm probably a slight bit taller than you are. I have a little bit longer legs, so I have a 1.5 meter stride when I run, which is
confuse me
about
with
4.
math. Thanks.
That's right.
Yes.
which is about 4 feet.
Wow.
I will say it helps me being 6'4" to run with my stride open. So, but it takes me a little longer still to get ready sometimes.
Yeah, I need a few months for a half.
Yeah, well, so I run 4 days a week.
Nice.
My short runs are Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I do anywhere between 5 and 7K, so that's 3 to 4.5 miles. And then on weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, I tend to run anywhere between 10 and 25.
This guy is
Wow.
a beast. That is awesome, man.
I just do 5Ks a week unless I'm training for something.
I drink so much beer that I have to run that much. Otherwise, I would look like Jabba the Hutt.
Truth. Very true. This is why I play basketball still.
Yeah,
Yes.
running's terrible. I hate it when I do it.
I love running. I get out. I tend to let's see. You're Eastern time, right, Lauren? Because you're in Florida, and you are Mountain time, right? Because you're I get up and run at 4:30 in the morning, Lauren time, which is 2:30 in the morning, Matt time.
I'm still sound asleep.
Yikes.
But yeah, so I enjoy it. I get out when it's early. There's no other people. It's quiet. It's peaceful. I get that as my in my own head time. And it's amazing. You get out there and you don't really think about anything else. You're just concentrating on the run, and it's a great way to clear your head and just get a good perspective on the day.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, I'm running on a treadmill in my bedroom while my 4-year-old throws stuff at me. So it's a little different. But I actually got into running because a local brewery was doing a run night, and a friend wanted me to do it with her. And since we're in Orlando, when it's not COVID, we have the Disney runs, and the Disney runs are incredibly overpriced, but a ton of fun.
They're so much fun.
Right. I was actually supposed to do, what is it now? 3 years ago, they did, it was the Avengers series. So there was like,
In 2017?
There was I think so. It was like a 5K
on
5K on Friday, a 10K on Saturday, and a half marathon on Sunday. And I was all set to go, and I was supposed to go with 3 other people, and they all bailed on me. So I was like, all right, well. So I didn't want to go run it alone. The whole point was we were all going to wear costumes and run these things together, and then they all bailed on me. So I just ended up not going.
And then Disneyland doesn't do them anymore. Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
I only
they
did the
don't.
5K because I had just had a baby a few months before that. But it was amazing. And with Disneyland being so tiny, we ran through both parks in downtown Disney in just a 5K.
Yeah, I did Star Wars
in Orlando,
one,
that
which
is not the case.
fun.
You're like running by the sanitation area in Orlando.
Yeah.
Tasty. All right. So typically when I'm talking about the style of beer, I like to give an example of breweries that I think make the style well. So I'm going to say, first off, Whitewater Brewing here in Ontario. This is actually, being the first time I've had it, I can actually say this is a good blonde. I would drink this again. Another great one is actually the other beer I happen to have, which is from Nickelbrook Brewing, which is another blonde. These guys make fantastic beers. They actually have a barrel aged series. It's their Bastard series. So they make one called Whiny Bastard, which is aged in Pinot Noir barrels. They make one called Cafe del Bastardo, which is aged on coffee. And they make one that's called Kentucky Bastard, which is obviously aged just in Kentucky whiskey barrels. All of them are fantastic. They all come in well above 10%, and they all give you that typical. You get that nice oaky vanilla and kind of that leatheriness to them, and that super rich chocolate. And the Cafe del Bastardo, if you're into coffee stouts, man, it's nothing but coffee.
Yeah.
So, as far as blondes go, like I said, Whitewater and Nickelbrook here both make Victory down in the States.
Yeah, Victory's a good one.
Yep, Summer Love is a good blonde. And then Deschutes makes a great one called Twilight Summer Ale, which is another good blonde. Yeah. So, I mean, and both of those are ones you guys should be able to get.
Yeah,
is,
I'm
pretty,
very close
pretty
to
well
Deschutes. That one's out there in Bend, so I'm able to get to that, and I get their beer pretty often. So they do make a really good one.
I've
the
been
Big
to the Portland
Butte is one of my favorites.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I think we get fresh squeezed now.
Nice. So yeah, I mean, you guys have anything going on in your lives you guys want to brag about? Because that's typically another thing that we do. Self promotion, come on.
I will self promote, but then I actually have to get running a little early. I apologize.
That's
watching
fine.
my daughter in the camera right now, and she's starting to jump off couches.
The joy of young children.
But no, Lauren, what do you got? What do you got to brag about? We got.
I didn't have anything to brag about. I was just gonna say, Fly Linda Brewing in our area has some great blondes because they do all sorts of fun adjuncts, and they're actually they're over in Titusville, which is like on the East Coast, just south of Daytona Beach. And they're regularly at Disney, especially at Epcot, at all their food and wine festival, because Epcot always has some sort of festival going on, and so there's always like local beers and different beers you can try. You have to pay for them, but you can try them. So they do a lot of fun ones for every kind of festival that they have. So I've had a lot of fun different blondes, because I was saying it's not my go-to style, but when you add the right adjuncts to it, and it adds the right flavor, I mean, you can't go wrong. It's still a great beer, especially, like you were saying, in the heat when it's hot here majority of the year. I did really enjoy this Astoria Strawberry Blonde, though. That had a lot of flavor. So I very much so enjoyed that one. And I have nothing to brag about.
I don't really either, other than just being on this show, because I think this is a really informative, really exciting show. And if you want, I'd love to get your address and send you a pint glass and some stickers of ours as well.
Excellent. Yeah. When we're done recording, I'll give you the information.
Heck yeah.
Just take a second. So for those who might not have caught it when I was blabbering 45 minutes ago, what's the name of your guys' podcast?
Hops Geek News. And you can find us just by searching Hops News on every platform. It's kind of the main show that we do where we strictly talk about beer. Hops Geek, we just talk about comic books with beer. So that's how you're able to find us.
Excellent. Like I said, I'm all about the self-promotion and trying to get as much information out there about beer as I can. It doesn't matter if it's from me or for someone else.
Absolutely.
So yeah. Until next time, I'd like to thank anybody who watches this. If you liked it, please click the like. If you want to subscribe, please do that, and click the little bell if you want to be notified. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you'd like to suggest a style or a brand or a specific beer that you'd like to have discussed, please leave that. If you have questions for Matt and Lauren, leave them there in the comments below, and I'll be sure to forward them on. Other than that, until next time, I'm Rob from the internet. Cheers.
Cheers.
Hey, cheers, everybody.